Hello and welcome to Evolving on Purpose, a show I have created in hopes that I can inspire you to take the deep dive into discovering who you are and what you came here to do. Each week, I will have on individuals to share their unique journey to self-discovery and where their purpose is taking them. I will also do solo episodes to share what I am currently learning, practicing, or even just contemplating. So come on, what are you waiting for? Join me in Evolving on Purpose. Hello, David. I have David Tracy on the show today. I just can't wait to hear. I kind of know what you're doing now, but I haven't heard the story of how you got there. So tell us who you are now, what you're doing, what you're bringing to the table, and then let's back up and hear how you got there.
Absolutely. Well, I own an international marketing agency called Northgate Marketing. As of 2 days ago, before when this was recorded, it was 3 years old. Crazy journey for me to get to this point in my business. But so I own this international marketing agency. I'm a business and marketing consultant. And I also am currently in training as a quantum healer. So it's kind of an interesting gamut of a lot of variety of things. And but as you hear my story, you'll see, oh, this all makes sense.
That's how it always is. I'm always going through something like, I don't even understand why I'm learning this. Why am I into this? Why? And then later on, you see why, right? Like you can see that the puzzle pieces are coming together. So
100%.
Back up and tell us, like, who were you before? How did you get to this place?
Yeah, so I grew up overseas. So from the age of about 5 forward, my parents were doing international nonprofit work. So we lived in Mexico, we lived in Guatemala, Canada. Eventually, we established ourselves in Panama. I lived there. I grew up there, so I lived there for 25 years. So altogether, I've lived 27 years of my life in Latin America. So I'm fully bilingual. I'm a white guy with a Latin soul, and very, very. It wasn't just living in Panama, and it wasn't just the Latin American culture, but my parents specifically worked amongst indigenous tribes. So I grew up amongst indigenous tribes in the jungle, got to experience things that when I look back at it, I'm like, wow, that really was very unique, because when you're growing up in whatever setting, you just think it's normal. But then we'd canoe out and through the rivers and the jungles and go out to this village where there's no electricity, huts, everybody cooks an open fire, the rainforest canopies overarching, the howling monkeys in the distance, swinging from the hammocks. My brother and I would glide down muddy slopes into the rivers and swing like Tarzan on vines and the whole thing. Very amazing, unique upbringing to where, tourists would sometimes go to Panama and they'd go to the indigenous tribes and they'd be taking photos, and it was like going to Disney World. But for me, it was like, this is my family, my brothers, my sisters. Some of them were like maternal figures to me as well. And in fact, we had a foster child who was an indigenous girl in my family. She was my sister. So that integration of the cross-cultural, the symbiosis of humanity ecosystems that are created with shared experiences, and just my mindset is so diverse in the sense of when I see people, and having then traveled to 40 something countries. So when in my adult years, I started a nonprofit in Panama City and did urban development and urban work. We also did earthquake relief, flood relief. We built homes for people who had lost their homes. We international arts festivals and just a variety of things. Ran a grade school, many, many, many things. And so in that time, I had traveled extensively, bringing groups of volunteers around the world to do volunteer work. And again, I'm working with people from Africa, in Latin America, or in Egypt with people from Korea, or in, you know what I mean? So there's always this like diversity happening. And so a lot of that helped me, I think, when it comes to marketing, if I want to put it that way. So I had done international nonprofit work for many years. I had never, ever thought, oh, I'm going to go start a marketing agency. That really came about as a transition. So again, I'm kind of getting ahead again, but I've had cancer twice in my life. First time I was 14. I was 14 years old, living in Panama at the time, got cancer, had to go through, well, at the time we went through chemo. I would not do chemo again, but at that time I did. And basically during that time, and again, it was just very much like when you're 14, your life was disrupted, you know?
Yeah.
So big time. School, the whole, everything was disrupted. So for 5 years, I was really sick. And I had a lot of time laying in bed sick and processing and really kind of being in that theta wave state a lot of the time. So that creative energy, the creative juices were really, really flowing and really getting to a place where I felt like I was co-creating all the time and just always dreaming up ideas and concepts and visuals and arts and stories and this and the other. And so that really was also a foundation to some of my creative journeys when it came to marketing. So fast forwarding again, I'm 30 years old. At this point, I'm living in Hawaii with my family, my wife, and we have 4 daughters. And I was doing international nonprofit work there, and I get a second cancer diagnosis, completely unrelated to it, the first one, and it was liver cancer. They're like, you gotta leave Hawaii. There was no proper cancer care in Hawaii, so we went to Mayo Clinic. And this is another really bizarre story within the story. When I was in Hawaii, I had this very strong conviction that I was not supposed to accept the cancer and that this wasn't meant to be. And so I didn't. And I determined and I got people together and I said, all right, let's contend for this. That I won't have cancer. And we did. And amazingly enough, I had the biopsy showing that it was cancerous, malignant, and go to Mayo Clinic. They do the biopsy sample. Yep, you need to do the surgery. Do the surgery. Wait a second, you had cancer and now you don't. And so the doctors were perplexed because they're like, you had cancer and now you don't. What happened? And so there's so many things that really woke me up, because even as I was waking up from surgery, even before I knew the diagnosis of the cancer being gone, being healed, essentially, there was a moment when I was waking up from the anesthesia where I literally felt like God was like, you aren't going to do this anymore. You're not going to do international nonprofit work anymore. I'm bringing you into entrepreneurship. And it was a new level, a new like evolution into, I had been doing the volunteer work globally, but now I was going to produce the abundance and produce the wealth in order to disperse it and to help build a magnitude of awareness. That was really the beginning of this new journey of, I'm going to go into this marketing realm. So I had done some marketing in the nonprofit realm. I had done some documentary film. I had done different things, but I had never considered it as a career. I didn't start with Northgate, my own company. I worked with another agency first. I was director of marketing and the director of operations for a mobile app company. And then eventually transitioned out and moved to Des Moines, Iowa, to be closer to my wife's family. And we started Northgate. And Northgate was birthed on February 7th of 2020, just a month shy of the pandemic. And had I known the pandemic was coming, I probably wouldn't have started it, but I did. But in many respects, it became the gift that propelled Northgate forward, because I had already had these connections all around the world I had made. So very, very quickly, Northgate acquired international clients, not just local Iowa clients. So we got local Iowa clients. We still have many Iowa local clients, but I've got clients on 4 continents, and we've helped businesses all over the world and nonprofits, dozens of nonprofits at reduced rate or pro bono, locally and internationally. So that's really, in a nutshell, some of the things that have been going on. What I think I bring to the table in terms of the marketing is really the understanding of the way human beings think. Different cultures think differently about different things. They can see the same image and come to a different conclusion. Everybody's that way in really many respects. Each individual carries their own culture. But there also are cultural groups. And so that's been a huge asset for me. And I think also just the ability, when I listen to my clients and they tell me their stories and they're telling me their dreams, their vision, their values, their mission, I'm also in many respects applying a process of listening to them, but listening upwards as well. And then I'm kind of this conduit to really get and tap into source, and then tap into the ability to translate that and get it into a message, a brand message that it means something to the culture of the individual, as well as the culture of the community that's around the individual, as well as to the client base of the individual. And the brand has layers of meaning and interpretation. So I love that process. So yeah, that's in a nutshell.
Yeah,
Lots
yeah.
there to unpack, but
There's one thing I want to go back that seemed a little bit significant to me. I love astrology just because it kind of teaches us the cycles and the different lessons, right? And a lot of people are a little, if they know what Saturn is, they're like, "Ooh, Saturn's the teacher, right?" And if you're not aligned, it is the hammer. It's not always wonderful, right? But it teaches us, and so Saturn gives us our grades at certain times. So 7, 14, you got the Cancer,
mhm.
kind of changed the trajectory,
Yeah.
kind of changed the way you looked at things, right?
Yep.
21 and
Mhm.
28, 30. It's usually 29 to 30 is that Saturn return, right? Like that's the big grade. That's when people shift their entire lives. And that's when you got the second
Yes.
bout of Cancer, right?
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. No, it is very you're 100% right about especially the 7 year thing. And it's these different seasons of, all right, you've gotten this far. Now wake up and renew and refocus, realign.
Yeah.
And both cancers incidents did that for me.
So yeah, so you have these 7 year cycles that you've seen.
Yeah, so exactly. If I look at it numerous times in my life, there have been moments where it's like, yeah, like different stages of my life. And that number 7 is very significant to me as well. And many elements, it has significance to me. So it's almost to me like the closing of a chapter, pause, and then reset, restart, and realign, right? So both times I had cancer were very much that for me. It was like, okay, and I think part of it is this, as much as we want to evolve and want to grow, we want to keep expanding our reach and keep accomplishing the goals we want to accomplish. So often we get in our own way and we slow down the process that can otherwise be escalated by our own resistance. And so both times, I think I look at them as almost like divine interventions. It was like, stop, pause, reflect. And so when I was 14, it was very, very much that whole time period of my life. Those adolescent years are very formative. They're very formative years for your personality, for your careers in the future, the type of friendships you acquire, the many of the insecurities we carry too. A lot of them can happen during that time as well. And I had a time where most often during that time I was alone. I was alone a lot, and it was just me and God, and just talking and just processing, and the really that theta place of just being very still and and just on the subconscious level really creating these things, and that was really beautiful. And I really am thankful for those 5 years. And then when I graduated and then I went into culinary school, actually, I thought I wanted to be a chef and have this kind of artistic, knack.
I
But
did the same thing.
but it really, did you really?
Yeah, I thought for sure when I got out of the military I was going to be a chef, and I went to culinary school and I was like, I don't think this is for me.
Yeah, yeah. It's so fun to cook, right? But it's so not fun to repeat the same thing over and over again all the time. So,
I know
so
you watch like Top Chef or something and you think you get to come up with these creative, beautiful, wonderful things, and then you find out that it's like doing the same thing over and over again, right?
yes, totally, 100%. So, yeah, it is. When I was 30, that was completely different though, and that for me, man, talk about different case scenario, because in this situation, I'm not a dependent of my parents. I have dependents. I have 4 children. I'm married, like the whole thing. And I'm like, this is totally different. And it was a very vulnerable season for me. And before I had clarity that I wasn't supposed to have the cancer, there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of anxiety about it, because what if I die, and what if I leave my wife a widow and my children orphans? You're not really orphans, but you know what I'm saying, like
Yeah.
all the things. And so And also, frankly, in the back of my mind, what have I accomplished? I want to accomplish more in my life. Why? But when I spent a couple of days in that place, and then I just knew. And overnight it shifted. I knew I wasn't supposed to accept it, and my mindset completely shifted. And I think that's a huge thing for so many people, is that we are very capable, if we are tapped into source and we are tapped into the alignment, to be able to heal. But we so often allow ourselves to be driven not by source, but by emotions and the fear rather than the love. And so then I've met so many people who are just like, yeah, well, I have cancer and I'm sick and I'm going to die. And I'm like, well, you don't have to. You don't have to.
Yeah.
And
even if it's I think that some people they're meant to have an exit at this time, and that's okay. Right.
yeah,
But no matter what, the mindset of it, like, I don't have fear of death, right? Like, I have fear of not completing my mission here on earth.
yes.
I have fear of, maybe I get anxiety sometimes. I have fear of getting stuck in a mental construct, but I don't fear of death.
No.
It's like, that's just everybody's going to die. Like, we are all going to accept it right now, right?
Yeah,
like,
100%.
Nobody gets out of here alive.
100%.
But how are you going to live? What is the mindset that you're going to take to every single situation that comes up? And yeah, I just think about, I kind of think that this is kind of a Saturn episode. Like, what are the lessons here? So if anybody wants to just stop and think, you don't have to be into astrology, you don't have to be into any of this. What happened at 7? What happened at 14? What happened at 21? Maybe 28. Usually the Saturn return is right between 28 and 30. So that's like, all of a sudden you're kind of an adult. I mean, I didn't really feel like an adult at 25 or 26. I still was calling my mom for everything. But at that age, I had my first child and I was in charge of somebody else. I had to be the adult, right? Like, really step into it. So you had the cancer come up again the first time. You didn't really have a choice. Your parents made choices for you.
Yeah.
And now you have the choice. You have to decide for yourself, am I going to do chemo? Am I going to go through this again? You had to make the choice from adulthood. And so, I would be interested for anybody listening to kind of go back and think about these times and see what were the lessons.
Totally. And the interesting thing was that, so this year in May, I'll be 37. Last year, in the fall, I started to have a series of progressions of health issues arise again. And at this point, I could see it. I could see it coming. I'm like, oh no, and this can't be happening again. So there comes a point to where the question is, why does it have to be sickness that causes me to walk into awakening every time?
Yeah.
And
because it shows up for other people different ways, right? Like, it might be every 7 years you have a crisis and you quit your job, or you have a relationship issue, or your teacher is different, right? But for you, it's health.
Yeah. And I'm like, and so this is around the time where I had met Carrie Kenzie, who you have also featured on your podcast. And she first came in as a client, and I was doing marketing consulting for her and doing different things. And then I'm hearing what she's talking about and I'm processing it internally. She doesn't know I'm doing this. And I'm just like sitting there like, yep, nailed it. Yep, numerous times. And then next thing you know, we're talking more and more and more and more. And she just began to, and what she is, she's a quantum healer and life mastery coach. So she just started to be like, okay, David, what's going on? And so at this point in my life, I had built up the international agency. I had a large team, clients all around the world, but I was working nonstop, pretty much 7 days a week, mornings and nights, and just not resting, which obviously you're going to get sick if you keep doing that. And then just feeling worn out, on the brink of burnout. So I started to have thyroid issues. I started to have liver issues again. I started to have heart issues. I started to have kidney problems. I started to have my blood work. I was starting to get anemic. And of course, we look at all that. A lot of it was hormonal based as well. And as I'm learning about this, the chakras more and all the connection there. And it's like I was resisting everything. And it came down to she was pulling the thread of trauma in me. It was traumas from, obviously many of them were from my childhood, even before the cancer. We're talking like in those early formative years. But a lot of it came down to my self-worth, feeling unworthy, feeling like I had to earn my love. I had to earn my keep. I had to earn affection. I had to earn by working very hard and helping save the world. Because one of the things with the nonprofit realm of what we were doing was we were helping people all the time. And so you can really get wrapped up into helping others as a form of identity rather than it being from the overflow, the abundance standpoint. It's functioning from a place of scarcity and fear. And so I had been carrying that kind of weight, the weight of the world, this kind of, I don't want to call it like a savior complex. I needed to save people and the world. And I had carried all this stuff. And so I carried that right into the marketing agency. So suddenly it wasn't the indigenous people or the earthquake in Haiti or whatever it was. It was my clients need help. My team members, my employees, they need help. And so I was spreading myself so thin, trying to be everything for everybody. And so we got to the root of that, and Carrie just kind of pulled that thread, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So all of a sudden I'm like, that's it. I'm not going to get sick. I'm not going to allow that. I'm going to break that cycle where this needs to be my wake up call. Instead, I'm going to have my wake up call be direct with source. I'm listening. I'm awake. I'm here to process. So let's do that. Let's keep growing. Let's keep evolving. And so I ended up making some major shifts within my agency, really slowing down, taking on less clients, being much more selective with who I work with, and really finding that although I love working with a large variety of clients in different industries, that my favorite ones really had to do with the ones who were trying to help people be well, whether that be alternative medicine or if that be different modalities of healing, or whether that had to do with coaching or anything that's going to help an individual really rise into the next level, right? And so I started pivoting and really started to focus and hone in there. And then I started going an extra level. I'm like, oh, wow, I really am interested in this. And this is where Carrie Kinsey and I partnered up, and I'm like, can you train me to be a quantum healer? Because I'm like loving this right now. So she did. And I'm in that training right now. And it's crazy to see how many times in my life, because I had done counseling over the years. I had done counseling for dozens, hundreds even of people actually in the nonprofit realm. And I was applying some of these techniques, but without even knowing what they were, right? So very interesting. But in this season, what I'm really trying to do with my clients is not only help them with their marketing strategies, because I can go so far with them if I help them with their marketing, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's do a strategy, blah, 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 blah. But if they are struggling as an individual, if they're getting in their own way, it doesn't matter how good their marketing campaign is, the business still isn't going to be successful. It's only going to be as successful. Yeah. And I can't do an established brand for someone. And before the podcast began, you mentioned how you really struggle with marketing because it's still gross, snake oil salesman kind of vibes, right? And what I tell people is you don't have to sell anything if you believe it. You don't have to sell anything. You are the product. You're the brand. People aren't buying. Services and products are a dime a dozen. There's so many options out there. Why do people choose certain brands over others? Why do people choose certain services or individuals or companies over others? A lot of it has to do with the corporate culture or the individual's culture. When that individual knows self and knows who they are and believes passionately about what they do and believes passionately about their service or their product, they don't have to sell anything. They're selling it just by the truth of who they are.
Yeah.
And so that's an amazing thing. So I really been realizing how many business owners carry trauma into their business, because businesses are people at the end of the day, so this is that kind of crossroads to really effectively, okay, I can do the business consulting hat, I can do the marketing consulting hat, but let me also do the personal coaching consulting hat as well.
Yeah. And I think that I see this very, very clear. And 2020 was kind of that tipping point that people are really becoming aware. They're able to see the truth of things a lot more. I mean, we used to just say, "Oh, the government's got my back. Oh, the politician, this guy's got my back." Or we gave our lives to these industries and these companies because we needed to be kind of guided. It was a time of planning and having these big corporations kind of guide us. And now I'm just seeing so clearly that people are going, I don't know. I don't know that the government has my back. I don't know that these big companies have my back anymore. We're seeing the big companies are owning all these things that we thought were clean. Even I like really clean cleaning brands, and Myers sold out to this big company and they added back a bunch of stuff. And it's like, I don't know. I think that we really want pure intentions and we really are seeing it more. And I think that what you're doing to kind of make sure the individual is really tapped in, is really a healthy person, so they can sell the right product, right?
100%. And I think what's interesting is a lot of people I've talked to the last year and a half, post pandemic, are really struggling with trust issues in general. They're like, who do we trust? Because I don't know who to trust. It doesn't matter what side you were at when it came to vaccines or it came to whatever. I'm not even going to point fingers at any side right now. Both sides were mistrusting in some shape or form. And it actually caused a mistrust on such a societal level, whether you believed in masking or not masking, if you believed in it, all of a sudden it was very apparent, like, ooh, this person's wearing a mask, this person's not. This store is requiring it, this one's not. And it made this very, I think, in a way, very clear, crisp, concrete. People have different perspectives on some of the most basic, simple things. And it made this feeling of insecurity and mistrust because, in a way, before there wasn't a general awareness of our fellow man. There was, but there wasn't. We kind of lived in a bubble of our own existence, and the pandemic burst the bubble, right? So then all of a sudden it's like, okay, but let's talk about trust. What makes us think that we can just trust anybody, right? We already know from our life experience that trust is earned, and trust is a valuable pearl. We can't just give it to someone and just hope for the best. Like it is a process to trust someone. Now, we don't need to live in fear. We don't need to be putting up these walls up left and around to self-protect, but we also need to have an awareness of who we are and where our trust is, right? And so trust, I mean, I think to myself, like, I trust every day if I go out to eat that they're washing their hands when they're making my food, or that they're, using good ingredients that are, if I've vetted the restaurant, that they're not going to use GMO products or pesticides, and what I'm saying. But I don't know that. I'm trusting that the pilot who's flying my flight when I'm in the air is not on drugs, and is adhering or gotten enough sleep. I'm trusting that the people driving are not going to run me over, but I don't have control over it, right? And so there's this general societal aggression sometimes of this mistrusting that I'm seeing. And generally speaking, I'm like, you just can't fully trust anybody fully, right? You can't.
Yeah, this is what it brought me to. It brought me to understanding that I had to trust myself, and I didn't, because I wasn't listening to my inner connection. I wasn't trusting a gut feeling. I wasn't, because I had, and in human design, it gave me really clarity because I'm an emotional being, right? Like I have this emotional wave, and that's what pulls me. Some people have splenic and they can just yes or no. Some people have the sacral, but I have an emotional wave, and I would jump on the real high and it would turn into crisis for me. So I didn't trust. But learning how I operate, learning to kind of go within and really start to trust myself gives me the power to know, maybe I go to a restaurant and I check in with myself and I say, ooh, I'm not eating here, right? That's kind of radical. I got a hit that I'm not going to eat here. Like, we are guided.
Yeah.
We have this innate inner guidance. It's learning how to connect with that. It's learning how to trust yourself. And then you'll always be okay. And even like we were talking about, there's going to be hard things. Like, we're here to evolve. There's going to be hard things.
Yeah.
But when you really trust yourself, you'll get through it.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's when you can't love yourself and you can't trust yourself, then how can you love and trust others? How can you live a life that's not guided by fear instead? The opposite of love is fear. We're afraid of the outcome. So then fear creates all kinds of possibilities: fight or flight, aggression, insecurities, rejection of self, rejection of others, hiding, cowering, or lashing out aggressively, one or the other, right? Or coping mechanisms. For me, it is when I tap into divine source and self together, and it's like double whammy power there, right? It's like, yay, because I can trust highest source, and I can trust I can't always trust my conscious self because it's often led by emotions, right? But I can trust subconscious self to tap into highest source and to hear and listen if I dive into the curiosity. But the problem is that, again, we so often are not operating in awareness, like you said, walking into that restaurant and being like, huh, oh, but you are operating in a lifestyle of not just awareness, but awakening. So it is your subconscious is listening to the signals in the environment to then draw it in and go, no, I'm not doing that. And that's amazing when you can do that.
Yeah. And you mentioned theta a lot, right? Can you talk about that? Because not everybody knows what theta is. I mean, I've studied hypnosis and different things, so I know what the brainwaves are. But what does theta do for you? Why did you tap into that theta at 14? Talk about theta a little bit.
Well, I think I fell into theta by accident, but because I didn't know what it was, but at the time. But I think when we look at theta, the theta brainwaves really is that early childhood phase, right? Different people have different views on it. I think it's like 3 to 7, 4 to 7, time period especially. But it's that wave where it's not information. Children are not getting necessarily the information. It's more the context behind the information. So they're absorbing their environment. It's kind of the feeling that when you're in a meeting with someone you just met and they're saying the right things, but you can feel the other things that are actually going on. Like they're actually intimidated, or they're nervous, or they're upset, or they're insecure. You can feel that even though they're saying all the right things. There is children are that way. We're like little sponges absorbing our environments, and it starts forming the interconnections of our entire worldview, our entire structure, construct of safety, security, and who we are. We don't necessarily realize we're doing it at the time. We don't, but it is very formative of who we are later, until we get past that, the next stage of life where we're acquiring the information and we're starting to make judgment decisions. Most of the things that children are acquiring at that younger ages, they're just getting it by osmosis. So that's really one thing. That's one of the reasons so many traumas happen in that time period that affect us later on, right? But the theta brainwave is also that stage of where some people, you might equate it to when you're meditating and you get to that really almost like meditative state where you feel like you could almost fall asleep, but you're not. That's theta. Also, when you're just waking up and you're maybe you're aware that you're asleep, but you're not awake. That's theta. So the idea is that when you're in the theta brainwave state, is that it's a great place to create and deconstruct and reconstruct. Essentially, it's the ability for, it's that in that brainwave where our subconscious is driving the driving force, and not our conscious where we are controlling. Our subconscious is now driving, and it is then, if it's guided, and if you are in that awareness of the subconscious, so you are neither the conscious nor the subconscious, you are the awareness of the subconscious, and you're like, ah, here I am. This is where your spirit then interacts with your mind and thereby your body, and you can reconstruct and you can rebuild all kinds of patterns that have been there. And so when we guide someone into quantum healing, into a theta healing process, it is a process where they are guided to, in the subconscious level, to change patterns that have been recurring in their life and go, why? And so it's oftentimes this guided process to where by the time the person is in that theta state, it's the knee-jerk reaction responses. And it's not the well thought out conscious level response. It's like sometimes it doesn't even make sense what they're saying. Like you say something, how does this make you feel? First thing comes to your mind, blue, 7. It can be any number of things. But then as we keep, okay, why that? Why that? The subconscious comes out and says, this is why. And we go down to this original story that then is this thread that wove this whole pattern of existence, that by removing that one little thread, and I don't know if I explained it well enough, but like for those who are listening, but it's essentially, it's an amazing way to let your subconscious heal you.
Well, if anybody needs proof that we are there's like million trillion things going on at all times, right? Like we focus down into what's important. Our mind knows that we can't take in every single detail. And so it has to know what's important. And so if you've ever noticed when you've bought a car and then all of a sudden you see that car everywhere, that car wasn't that important to you until you owned it. And now all of a sudden your mind is like, this is an important thing. This is something that's in our awareness. So now you see it every single place you go. And so what we create in our awareness, and at 0 to 7, my life wasn't bad. I have 2 loving parents and 2 siblings, and I always thought that I lived a Brady Bunch life because I see so much trauma in people. But really, my mom was scared. Somebody would come to the door and sell something, and it was like, oh, I don't have money. I don't have money. I don't have money. Like we did not have a lot of money, and it was a stress. Money was stressful. Sheila came from 8 children and nothing. So life is stressful, right? Like life is scary. She's a Capricorn. Life is scary. And so that's the energy that I grew up in. And so even though that's not my personality, that's not something I easily recognize, it's always in the background. So I have to go in and see what is the background. What is my awareness seeing? It's seeing, marketing scary. It's seeing, giving people your money is scary. It's, like that's what it sees. And so I have to go in and reprogram that so that I can see the possibilities, because there's a trillion possibilities out there. In any moment, there's a trillion possibilities, but my mind is only capable, my conscious mind is only capable of taking in so many. And so I have to go in, rewire that program so I can see the possibilities that are getting me where I want to go.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And, you talked about the thing where you buy a car and people see it and that's what they see all the time. And that has to do, there's this whole concept of your frequency. So if your, whatever your frequency is, you will frequently see, and so if you are afraid, if fear is your frequency, if you're afraid of not having money, then you will always see those opportunities as a scarcity of finances rather than an opportunity. Whatever our frequency is set to is what we will frequently see. And I also think whatever we will frequently bring to our life, right? We draw those things in. So when our frequency is brought into the right alignment and it's based in truth and not in a lie that we might be believing about ourselves or a situation, whoa, all of a sudden it's completely different. Now I'm not looking at that as a threat. I'm looking at that as a opportunity. And you had addressed that, early on too, with different crises and different situations that we're in. They can either be the thing that breaks us or makes us. they can be the gift if we want them to be, right? And
Yeah.
that's where some of the most beautiful individuals in the world are the ones who were able to take their trauma, change the frequency, and turn it into a gift. It's beautiful, beautiful to watch
Yeah.
that process.
It is. And I do want to address, because I've heard a lot lately about toxic positivity.
Oh yeah.
What do you think about toxic positivity and that whole movement, right?
I think that there's a big difference. I think there's a big difference between forced positivity, conscious positivity, and subconscious positivity. That's what I would say. So when it is and that's where it becomes toxic. So I've met people who are like, well, I'm just going to choose to be happy right now, but they're not really happy. They're saying that and they're projecting that on themselves to try and trick their mind, but they're doing it from the conscious level, not the subconscious level. So in order to truly be in a place of, well, I'm going to be positive about this, you have to really believe it from within that there's positive value here, right? How do you get there? Because you can't do any mind tricks from the conscious level to try to trick yourself that something bad is good or negative is positive. So it is really in that place of, I think, getting into allowing yourself to get into the awareness of, okay, first of all, we have to understand and be aware that something's off, there's a problem. Then we need to make an allowance that, all right, there is a problem and I need to feel that this problem is here. I'm not going to deny the fact that I'm feeling this, but then I need to go into curiosity and go, why do I feel this way? Why did this trigger me? Why did I have to have the awareness of this? Because I'm aware of it now. Then it's going into, from there, essentially into the alignment based on what curiosity led you to. And that's where, in that curiosity space, whether you want to do that through the theta process or a quantum healing process or a meditation process or prayer or whatever it is, you're going to tap into the information through highest source and in self in the subconscious level to then understand, I did this because of this. And you have a choice there. And then to understand, okay, this is really what I want from this. This is really what my divine trajectory is. I'm going to align with that. And then you go from there into awakening. And in that awakened state, that is where then the negative becomes the positive. And in that state, you've allowed for the grief, the mourning, the whole thing to happen. You've allowed that process to be there. You didn't deny it. You didn't deny self and shove the trauma under a rug or whatever. You allowed for it to have its place, but then you heal it. And now you're operating in a place of healing rather than hurting.
Yeah. And I think that's so important to one of my favorite books is it really helped me through anxiety and panic attacks. It talks about like allowing and loving what is, and I'll have to look it up. I'll put it in the show notes, but just allowing, like, I'm feeling anxious right now and I love it. I love myself, right? Like I love myself even if I'm feeling anxious. Like I can love every moment, and that doesn't take away. Like I'm still uncomfortable. For me, I look through astrology, the full moon and the new moon, it brings things up all the time. There's these big moments that are going to bring things up. And so I've been working a lot on self-worth, and I felt really good. And then all of a sudden, months and months of really feeling like I've got this, right? Like I love myself. It just came back like an avalanche, right? Unworthy, looking online, seeing everybody else has got it and I don't, and how are they doing it? And I'm not there. And just this awful gut-wrenching, I'm unworthy. I'm not good enough. I'm not. And it doesn't knock me out anymore. It's like, ooh, that's still there, right? That's still there. So now I do my tapping, and maybe I do some meditation, and maybe I look and see like, why is this coming up? And maybe I send some love to my stomach because that's where it's feeling so tight and uncomfortable. But it gives you a chance to keep working on it when it comes up. And even if you think that you healed something, there could be another layer, right? Like we're never done.
We are never done. And I wish we could be sometimes, but at the same time, what what I learned, I think probably one of the most valuable things I learned from Carrie is the beauty of curiosity, the adventure of what curiosity is. And, even just yesterday, in full transparency, I had worked through a lot of stuff and actually was doing quite well. And then yesterday evening, towards the end of the day, I said something to Carrie that triggered the crap out of me, like badly. I couldn't believe what I said in the moment. And then I'm like hearing myself saying it and I'm like panicking. All of a sudden, my lips went numb. I started to get nervous. I started to get super sleepy, like I wanted to go take a nap. And she goes, "What's going on right now?" And I'm like, "Oh, nothing, nothing. It's fine." And then she was like, "No, it's not." So we right away, just by habit, I guess, went right into a theta healing process and we started asking questions. And it went back to the same trauma from before, except it was manifesting in a very different way. The trigger was different. So sometimes we can heal from the thread of trauma in one category of that, but sometimes there's numerous threads of the same caliber, but triggered by different sources. And so, but what was crazy about it was rather than resist the healing process, because I had dove into curiosity previously, I was like, let's do it. I got kind of excited about it. And rather than resisting it, because I was like, I'm excited because I know the good that's going to come out of this, right? I've been there, done that before where I resist and I hold on and I kick and I, don't want to heal and I'm, whatever. Now I know like the resistance doesn't produce resilience. It doesn't help me. So I'm going to then instead enjoy this journey that, hey, you know what? I just kind of got triggered and let's go into the adventure and of curiosity and find out why and then heal it. And it was good. It was good. In less than 30, 40 minutes, I had realized why that was there. Whereas before, I probably would have been like, I'm fine. Gone home, been kind of cranky and grumpy, and then wake up the next morning and then don't know why I'm lashing out and let it keep on keeping on. And instead, we just nip it in the bud,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so important for people to stay curious and understand that emotions, that anxiety, that all of these things are just guiding us back to an underlying something that needs seen, right?
Yes. Yep, exactly. We have daily opportunities to tap into curiosity, to tap into a whole world. I think for many people, it is this whole idea of self and introspection is a scary place to go into because they're afraid of what they're going to see. They're afraid of really facing self and then having to come to terms with what's there. But that's a fear-based response. At the truest essence of who we are, if we allow ourselves to fully tap into who we are beautifully made. We are beautiful people. We are beautiful individuals, unique, specially created with a very unique divine purpose. We are not subject to our circumstances. We are not subject to our environments. We can transcend that. We can transcend into a high divine purpose that is beautiful beyond belief. And I think that when we can take that risk to plunge and go deep and to really find yourself, that creates this like, oh, man, I was always there, wasn't I? I was always there, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
No, I love it so much. And I look at, my chart, my astrology chart, my human design chart, and it just gives me so much more understanding. Like, why did I come? Why am I this way? And recently I found I kind of had astrologers kind of skirt around it because I don't think they thought it was a good thing, but my sun is opposite Neptune, and Neptune is kind of hidden, right? It hides things. And so I think they thought, oh, she can't even see herself, right? But for me, that has always given me the curiosity. Who am I? Who am I? How am I going to get there? Who am I? And it made me dig and dig and dig and create all these tools that I can share with other people because of that. It was for me, not against me, right? And I feel like the more we can get curious, the more that we can see I was really lit up the other day. Aaron Rodgers, during the pandemic, started studying astrology. And he
Really?
was the biggest jerk, and he admits it, right? And then when he started studying his astrology and realized, like, ooh, I'm in the low frequency of all these things, and kind of could see who he could be and step into that more. And then he started doing all his teammates and his coaching staff. And he's like, just so he
That's
just can see everybody, why they're different and why they're that way. And I thought that was so beautiful that Aaron Rodgers, this NFL player, started doing astrology, and it made him a better human being.
cracks me up. Who would have guessed, right?
Yeah. I know. Let's get curious. No matter where you are, let's get curious, right?
Yes. Let's get curious. Let's dive deep. For me, and again, maybe it's my personality type. I love adventure. I love change. Okay, there's a mountain there we need to climb. Let's climb it. Like it's not and not, everybody's going to dive into curiosity a little differently, because each personality type is different. But when I allowed I think this is a huge thing, actually. When you know yourself really well and you understand your human design and you understand the way you've been designed, it creates this beautiful allowance for you to be able to be like, you know what, this is the way I do things, and I don't have to do it like this other person does it, because that's the way they do it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But this is how I do it. And that puts like this beautiful construct of, I don't then have to put up boundaries or try to protect self as much, or even really project that I need to be like this person for my inspiration. I can truly, not to say we can't glean from others, certainly we can.
Yeah.
But it's more of a, wow, like this is my process, and for me, I don't love a schedule. I don't love a tight schedule. I realize that. I don't like a tight schedule.
Yeah.
I like to have some freedom, but I can't have it too free, or else I'll just go into the dreamer mode and start dreaming all day long, right? So I need to have enough scheduled in my day to where it keeps me contained a little bit so I can be productive, but enough freedom to where I don't feel restrained. And in that process, that is the best outcome for me. I need to have creative people around me that feed my energy and I feed theirs. But I also need a lot of time alone to really create my own things. And when I realized that, I'm like, I don't really need a team of like 12 people working with me all day. I just need like one or two really amazing people. I don't need to have as many clients. I just need some. And I was able to then create better. So it allowed for that, because before I couldn't see it. And I was trying to be somebody that wasn't me. And now I'm working in this very happy place. It's a very satisfied place. Like each day feels really good. Like, so.
Just you saying that, I'm like, ooh, I think I know that design and that design, that design. And that's what I love,
Yes.
where you get to differentiate, right? Like we need every single color in the rainbow. We need every single thing to become this beautiful tapestry. We don't need just all reds. We don't need all blues. We don't need to fit in this little box. We can be exactly what we came here to be. And even if you're one that doesn't like change, get curious about one little thing in your life. Is it serving you? Like, what do you want out of life? And is that getting you there? Get curious about one thing. You don't have to make huge changes. You don't have to be a mountain climber and jump to country to be successful. You could just really love your life, and every single thing in your life is there for a reason, and it's getting you to what makes you feel like you, right?
Yes. And there's a big difference between contentment and settling. And I think that, when true contentment is, I am satisfied. It is good. Like this is good, even but I think a lot of people view contentment as settling. And, well, this is good enough, or it's fine. I want to operate in gratitude. So I'm going to be grateful, but there's a little bit of a settling that happens. And so I think that allowing yourself to dive into the curiosity part of that is so important, to really understand that to find the contentment, because there's something in our human nature. We either we just are, depending on the personality types, so easy for us to either seek contentment by producing the change all the time so we can never really stay put, or it's like, I'm just going to settle over here so I can find contentment. But it's like, no, there's a form of contentment where, yeah, you can be that personality type that is more introverted, doesn't like all the change, like saying steady Eddie, and that's great. But are you content? Are you satisfied? If you're not, then get curious. Why? Because you probably settled somewhere a little bit.
I mean, those words sound kind of similar, but if I wrote them, or if I saw somebody that looked like they were settling in life and I saw somebody that was content in life, I'm really attracted to that person that's content, right? Like that feels really good to be around. Like they have everything they need in life and they're there, right? Instead of settling is like, they don't really want to reach for what they really want. They're just kind of like comfortable, right? So I think there is a really nice slight difference in those two words that we need to ask. Like, where am I at in that, right? Where do I fall in that? Well, David, I can't believe it's already been an hour. So let's just kind of wrap up and tell people, I know. Let's tell people, what's out there. What if they want to learn more about you? Maybe they want you to do their marketing, or maybe they just want to follow you because you've got a lot going on, right?
Yeah, if you're interested in marketing, go to wearenorthgate.com. So we are like plural, northgate.com. And then my Instagram handle, my personal one is David Allen Tracy. There's also ripplesofchangefoundation.org. Which is the nonprofit that Carrie and I started. If you want to hear more about that, go into Carrie's podcast that Angela recorded. I mean, I'd be thrilled to meet. I love meeting new people. I love connecting, and you want to have a chat about your business or your business idea, or, also we have the Quantum Collective, which I think Carrie brought up before, which is a great community of people who are interested in growing and expanding and evolving, and doing so with a community of people who are wanting the same thing. We meet twice a month, virtually or in person, and it includes amazing discounts to local healers or even national healing modalities. So it's a great, and for anyone who's listening to this podcast, there's a full month free if you sign up through the podcast. So there's that. And yeah, I'm here. Like, I love meeting people. So I'd love to meet anyone who's listening.
Thank you so much, David. This has been wonderful. I hope everybody kind of reflects back and sees what they can kind of garner from their life, because I think we gave a really good kind of map of how lessons come up and how things come up, and using curiosity. So I think this is going to be really, really helpful for people. So I'm so thankful for you for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Angela. It's been so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up today and listening to this conversation. All of the support that I get for this podcast, I feel so appreciative of it all. I really hope that you do take the time to contemplate the different, we talked about the Saturn, 7 years old, 14, 21, and then right around 29 or 30. What patterns came up for you? What are you learning in these 7-year Saturn cycles, in the Saturn return cycle at 29 or 30? Look at those and you can see what pattern might come up again. Saturn's always just like in school, we have a test over what we've learned. That's where these 7-year cycles, Saturn shows up and says, did you learn the lesson? And then you either pass the test and move on to the next, or the lesson comes up again. So, and if the lesson keeps coming up, we don't get upset by it. We just, the more that we set intention to how we look at it and how we're learning these lessons, the less the lesson affects us, right? Like, we see it more, we can appreciate it for what it is. Also, where can you be more curious? Instead of getting overwhelmed or feeling the anxiety over something, where can you ask, what could this be? Where's the curiosity in this? Ooh, what can I learn from this? So curiosity is a really good way to flip the script on these kind of fears and anxieties that come up. So be curious, check in with your lessons, and as always, let's keep evolving on purpose.